All right, let's hit it. Now we're good.
Okay, cool.
All
Thank
right, all
you.
right. Gromo, man, thank you so much for just giving me your time just to come out on the podcast just so we can talk, chat a little bit because you're awesome. Just want to start off
Thank
by
you.
saying that, man. No, I
Thank you, man. I
mean,
appreciate it.
it's good. This is like I want to ask this question before I even get started in the interview as a whole. I gotta check in. How you doing in the middle of the pandemic? I know I read the COVID diaries, but let's get into it. How
Yeah.
are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm just kind of getting through. I'm on school break right now, so it's nice to have some time to myself and kind of not worry about too much. But I'm doing well. I'm getting through it.
Okay, yeah. And speaking of the COVID diaries, I read it, which was awesome and it was good, and it was a very good way to keep people up to date on how you were faring, what was going on, and everything that was happening in the middle of a pandemic because much like most people, you kind of hit the unlucky lottery. It was
Yeah.
a yeah, that's a word we used when it was just sort of like right when you was like really getting your stride going, it was a shutdown. And when the
Yeah.
shutdown
Exactly.
happened, it was like everyone had to think on their feet. And quite honestly, you did. And you were able to not only keep us up to date with the COVID diaries, but you were able to churn out more songs. As much as I want to sit here and say, well, you're this and you're that, I don't really know how to describe your music. I don't. It's awesome, but I'm not gonna pigeonhole you and put you in a box because you
Yeah.
jump from genre to genre. I'm more curious about not necessarily putting you in a box, but how would you describe your style on an artistic level for the casual listener?
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, like I totally agree with you. Even for myself, it's hard to kind of say what my music is because there's just so many different influences that are coming into what I create. Like I'll be taking 1 minute like some stuff from like EDM, then I'll be going to hip hop, then R&B and pop and rock music. It just goes everywhere. But I think what I've been kind of saying, I've been calling my music is just kind of like more aggressive pop music. Because like for me, I feel like the beats have to be hard and the melodies have to be something catchy and that something that people can remember when they listen to it. Something that you're still humming along to when you're not listening to the music and you're just walking on the street or you're on the subway just chilling like that's kind of how I like my music. It's just something where you can have a good time to it, basically.
And that's good. And I'm glad you were able to do that. One of the things I like whenever I talk to a producer, like I love asking quote unquote producer questions, mainly
Yeah,
because you guys are different. You guys are a different breed. You
for
guys
sure.
you're it's kind of cheating in a way because you guys are usually in the background and no one really gives you the credit you deserve until it's completely timed. You don't get credit until they get an award. The lead singer gets an award.
Yeah.
And like, I'd like to thank. Oh yeah, I wouldn't be here without. And here we are. But one of the things I would like to just get into is it challenging to kind of continuously tackle different sounds and styles while trying to keep it fresh. The music industry can be a bit of a copycat business. Everyone tries to sound like
Yeah.
everyone else. But if you're playing around with different sounds and keeping it fresh, how do you make that delineation?
Like I feel like for me, I'm just always kind of focusing on what I like. That's when I always think my best work comes from. And I am still a victim of someone who likes to follow, trends or, think that I have to do something in order to, go a certain way. But I've always felt like I've enjoyed making the music the most and my best music has always come from me just being like, I just want to do what I do. I want to do what I like, and then that's always when the good product comes out, when I'm just following instinct and I'm not looking at what other people are doing. I'm just kind of going just by pure inspiration and vibe. So for me it is kind of challenging always to be not like I like this cool sound just came out, let me try to do it and let me try to sound like this artist. But then like I feel like there's always a point where I look at those moments as practice, kind of like me just trying to get my chops up, kind of like if a guitar player is practicing every day. I feel like making kind of like what's everyone's doing for me could be like practice, and then when I hit that point of inspiration, that's usually when I'm in my pocket and I'm just doing what I want to do, and that's when it's always the most fun, whenever I'm just creating for myself.
Now, speaking of creation, and I gotta say this: can you listen to your sounds and your music objectively? And this is coming from, for lack of a better term, artist, because I'm not. A podcaster, host, a joke, whatever you want to call us. I cannot listen to any podcast after I'm done with it. So I'm very curious when I talk to the other creative minds. Can you just listen to something you've done without the instinct to want to tinker or mess around with it a little bit more? Can you listen to it objectively and just like that is that? That's awesome. On to the next one. What can you do?
Yeah, I like for me, like I am very proud of everything, all the music that I've made over the past like 3 4 years, and I like going back and listening to what I made in like 2015 or 2013, and then see kind of where it's come and just kind of see the progress. There are definitely a lot of things, like some things that I'm going back even today, and like little production things was like, oh man, I should have done that. Like I don't know why, why is this lower than that? I should have brought up that a little bit louder. But I think for me, it's like I understand where I came, and I understood that this was a process for me to kind of get to the skill set where where I am now. Like as far as production, like I've been doing production for close to 10 years at this point. So I think at this point I'm in a kind of like in a I still feel like I'm in the beginning phases of a producer. Like I've been doing it for a while, but I still feel like I haven't tapped into everything yet. And I feel like every producer will tell you that, even if they're like have multiple Grammys, they still will be like, I still haven't reached that point that I want to get to. And I don't think anyone ever does. Because if you do get to that point, then I think you just want to, I think that's when it's best to stop and do something else. Like, I think if you're always chasing to be better and learn more, I think that's when, you'll keep getting better and you'll keep having fun doing the music. So that's kind of where I've always been at. I'm trying to keep myself at. It's just having fun and keep learning and being open minded.
So well, again, the chase, the wanted to do better, and that was, I don't know, it's weird. Like you're looking at my notes, but that was my next question. What is the line where where you making your mind where this is something that can be saved for later, this is something that can be better, or this is just trash. Let's cut it off. Let's start it over. Where's that line with you where you just kind of like, I can make this better, or no, let's just burn it all down, start from the beginning.
That's very funny. That happened to me this morning, and I feel like now I'm becoming way faster, and it is at those points, kind of like when you're in your earlier question, when those points where I feel like I'm following whatever people are doing, that's when I just kind of I stop. So like I was making something today, I was like, oh wait, this sounds way too much like insert artist. I'm just gonna delete this now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll step away. For me, I believe in stepping away from the computer, from the process. When you're not feeling it. Like I think it's better to kind of let yourself just relax and just you know think through things before you kind of go and execute. You want to make it kind of a fun process, and at least for me, I've been doing it for a while, so I kind of know when the time's to stop. But it's whenever I feel like it's not authentic to me, when I feel like it's not the vibe that I'm proud of. So usually at those moments, it could be sometimes it could take me 4 days, a week to figure out that this thing is not good. But now I've been being much faster. So now today it was at least like 15 minutes. I was like, okay, this isn't good, so I'm just gonna delete it. I'm gonna make something else later. So like it just depends on whatever it is. But when it comes to like larger form projects, like a song with an actual vocal on it, that's a lot harder, because that's someone else's work, as a collaboration. So that I think that I usually have to live on it for like a few months before I kind of, or a month or two, or just be until I get to the point where I can be like, okay, maybe I don't want to put this out. Maybe I just want to have this to show people, to show more people kind of like what kind of different genres I do. It's good to have a big catalog. Like as far as like putting stuff out, you don't need to put out everything you've made, but I think having a lot of finished product is really important as far as just learning how to finish songs, because that's one thing I think a lot of producers struggle with is just like finishing tracks. Like that's super important. Just make sure you finish all your tracks.
Okay. Now, something I wanted to touch on just a little bit. When you talked about other people, like what draws you to those people? Like obviously, I've heard things that you've done with Hush and Ray Raj and just to name a few. What is it about them that makes you say like, oh, I could work with this person, or you draw? I mean, because they're accomplished in their own right. But
Yeah.
at the same time, what is it in you to just like, hey, you know your thing that didn't suck? I can make it so much better. What is it about them, or what is it that's drawn to that you draw from those people that you just want to just break your neck and work with them?
I think it's just like someone just trying to do their own thing and try to, just be, their best self. Like I can always kind of tell when someone's just trying to be, do the work that they want to do, that they're not really following too many things and, they're experimenting. So I think at least like with Hush, like Hush was an artist we met virtually back in like end of 2017, early 2018, and he was just one of the first people I really locked in with and had an instant vibe with, as far as inspiration. Like if I made a beat, he knew exactly how to complement the beat, and that was like that was something where I never happened before, where I met a vocalist who actually knew exactly where to take the record, like where I was even thinking it, but I couldn't find the right vocalist to do that. And someone like Rhea too, like she when I first met her like earlier last year, like she was someone who really kind of knew where to take the track and take it to that place that you're kind of hoping you can get it to, and those people really know how to get it almost so close to there, and it's pretty great when you can work with someone who knows how to kind of execute almost exactly what you're thinking about, and then together you can kind of mutually put it together and piece it the way how you both think should be turning out at the end.
Now, because of your roots in rock music, I have to ask this question. I would be doing myself a disservice if I did not ask this question. Mainly from like every other question is for the people listening at home. This is for me. This is personal because I'm in Detroit. I don't know if you can tell I'm wearing a lot of Detroit stuff, and we're gonna jump into New York in a second
Yeah.
because you are totally inspired by your upbringing.
Oh
But
yeah.
Detroit Rock City, New York City, one thing we do have in common is our love for rock music. And for years, I have been saying rock is not dead. It's on life support, but it's not dead.
No, it's not.
In your words, what do we need to hear as far as rock music go to bring it back to like, hey, I told you it wasn't dead?
I think it's just, you know, I think with rock music at least, I feel like a lot of rock artists kind of live still in the past. And even as a rock fan, I still live in the past. Like the golden age, like you get oh man, like the '60s, the Stones, Zeppelin, and then you go like '80s, the rock music. And I think that some of those bands are still kind of just trying to find their voice because like it's been a strange time, from like the end of the '90s to the 2000s because everything became electronic fully. Like by the time it was like 2000, like the bands were just starting to use Pro Tools. Then by 2010, dance music becomes really popular, and then by the rest of the 2010s, it's fully electronic. So I think it's been like a few years of just bands try to figure it out, kind of where to have their kind of sound. And I'm kind of hoping it just going back to great songwriting. I think that's all. It's all about the end. It doesn't matter what you're using. It doesn't matter the software. It doesn't matter what guitar you're using. As long as the song's good, that's when people will like it. So I think as once time moves on, I think that more people get into rock music. But the interesting thing is like when I kind of like I met someone who was like a teenager in high school through Ria, her sister, and she was telling me all about all these bands she was listening to who are current now, like the Tame Impalas and stuff like that. And then she would also tell me about like other rock bands that were from like the '80s, and I was like, oh, okay, so like kids are interested in stuff now, and it was an interesting thing for me to hear that now the younger generation is starting to dig back, kind of like the way how I did when I was a kid and fell in love with all the rock bands. So I think also with just the exposure of how much music that we have access to, I think over the next 10 years, I think we're going to be hearing even more interesting combinations of sounds.
And I get that. And because, much like myself, I don't like what's happening now, which makes me go back. It's like circular because
Yeah.
then you understand how do we get here from there. So I
Yeah,
get that. But I mean, like in my own personal opinion, right now we have very few rock stars left. We have Dave Grohl, Brendan Urie, and Brandon Flowers, and that is all. That is the end of list right now.
yeah,
Until something happens, and then we
yeah,
get more people. But only time would tell. Speaking of time,
exactly.
I talked about my time here in Detroit because I'm a lifelong Detroit guy. You New York City to your heart. It shows up in your
Yeah,
music. We see it. It is essentially every track you've ever thrown out. I don't know if you know this or not. There is a bit of a love letter to New York in there. If it's
mm,
not, if it's something little, if it's something with sound, if it's something where it's like a tip of the cap. Hey, remember that? I did it. I'm curious,
yeah.
what is about it? What about your hometown makes you feel like, hey, that city that everyone knows about? Well, here's a little bit more. What is it about that makes you want to just tell the world or influence you as you make this music?
I think for me, New York is like it's been very important for me, and and you're right. It's very tied into my identity as an artist and especially as a person. Like I growing up in the city has just been such a crazy experience, and for people who have not lived in New York in like the 2010s, like it's a hard thing to describe because there's so many different things that have happened in the city, and just the way you're kind of growing up in this environment. I think that it really kind of rubs off onto you and it kind of builds your character. And as far as when it comes to my tracks, I'm always trying to add that New York grit because even if it's like a pop track, like from made by someone from New York, it still has that raw New York feel to it. And that's one of the things I think a lot of the music right now has been missing is that rawness. And no matter what track I'm working on, I'm always trying to add that gritty street feel to it. Just like it just came out of, the subway or the sewer in New York City. Like even like with the hip hop music. Like I'm a huge hip hop head and when I was just starting to dig into that music, immediately I knew this was New York. And that's probably one of the favorite things about listening to that music was I was like, wow, this music is so representative of what this city is like, what it's like to be in New York when it's like pouring rain and it's dark, when you're walking around the street and you don't know what's happening, you see someone move, or it's just like you're always on edge in the city, day or night. So I think I'm always trying to add that into our music, and I think that's what I love about the city. It's just how many different personal and cultural identities there are here as well. It's such a big inspiration, and it's just always kind of bleeding into my music that I make.
Okay, and that's fair. But one thing I want to do, I talked about something you like and something that you're passionate about. Now put your name on it. If you don't want to do it, I get it. Can you tell me something that you don't like about the music business right now? Because in our league, I talked about how rock's not dead, the copycat culture,
Yeah,
and this is my biggest pet peeve. And I don't want to tell you because I feel like if I tell you something you don't know, now you're going to listen for it.
yeah,
But my biggest thing, and I apologize in advance, it's going to infect you. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Is pop songs. Pop songs that machine gun the word tonight. I'm dead serious. Every pop song that's just plain sucks, in my opinion, has at least 4 or maybe 5 times they say the word tonight. I'm tired of it.
Wow.
It's when you okay. Like I said, I apologize. Shoot me an email. Shoot me a text. You're gonna hear about it. Go through your phone. Find that one song that you thought sucked.
Yeah.
I guarantee they machine gun the word. You will hear the word tonight at least 4 times.
Wow. That's actually so interesting.
That's mine. Like I said, that's my pet peeve. I'm curious. What is yours?
I think social media determining what music you create. I think. For me, I think that a lot of artists right now are kind of pressured by management, labels, A&Rs to kind of be following what the numbers say. And I think the more that I hear that, the more I call out BS. I'm just like, you know what? these numbers are nice, but that doesn't qualify good music. And I think that's one of the things that's probably not really affecting the music well is that everyone is just like, okay, I need to follow exactly what the numbers say. This is how I've increased. This new platform comes out. I need to make music that fits this platform. I think all of that has not benefited the music industry in the way of how artists create music. I think that it's given artists a lot more exposure than in the past, but I don't think it has made better quality music that people can listen to in 10 years. Because I think a lot of the music that comes out, I don't think I'm going to listen to it in even like 5 months. Like crazy. Most of the big songs that came out last year, I'm not even listening to them anymore.
Yeah, it
They
makes
sound
sense.
old at this point. They stink. I like, man. I thought like some certain songs they came out like 3 years ago, but they came out like earlier last year, and I was like, wow, like songs' lifespans are just so much shorter now. And I think it's just because just the numbers and what's happening on social media. So I think that's probably my biggest pet peeve, and that's why at least for me, I'm trying to remove myself from looking at the social media, just focus on the art. I think that's what it should always be about is the art.
And that makes sense. I mean, because whenever you do anything, quote unquote, topical, and this may feed into why I don't like the songs with the word tonight in it so many times, because we're focused on this one thing right now.
Yeah,
That song doesn't have time to grow. The only song, and I'm sorry I keep hammering this point, but the only song with tonight that I tolerate that I think is good this far into it is Smashing Pumpkins' Tonight Tonight. That is it. That is the only one. But that was on an album that was just instant classic. Melancholy, Infinite Sadness. That was instant classic. But other than that, I'm just showing you this is the reason why people don't like DVR the news because it doesn't matter. When you watch it, it's already old. We don't care. Something else has already happened. So
exactly.
this and that aging well process, that's very important, especially with music. Because when I hear a song, especially a song I like, I could pinpoint myself at that time, the first time I heard it, it bleeds into you. It gets in you. You think about where you were, what happened, what were you doing. And quite honestly, if social media is dictating that, I don't want a song that just shows I was on my phone while something awesome was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to be a part of that awesome. So that's like I said, it's my 2 cents. I totally agree with you. But I'm curious. Now that we know that, what advice would you give the new and upcoming artist who's listening to us right now? What would you give to them? Like, hey, before you do this, this is advice I will give to you to make our future better.
Hmm. I think in general, I think the most important thing for any artist is to remember that, as much as, I know I was talking a lot about the art, but at the same time, I think that it's crucial for young artists understand the business of music. Because at the end of the day, it is called the music business. And there is a business behind it. And if you can lock in and understand the basics of what goes on in this game, what happens, what each department in the music industry, how they work, what makes up a song, like what are the parts of the song, what part did you work on, what part your collaborator worked on, how deals work, how to sign the labels, what are labels asking you, what types of deals are there, what goes on in touring, how much should you be paid for X gig, how much, the venue wants, merchandise, anything that involves business. I think that is probably the most important thing you should be understanding before you even kind of launch yourself. It's just to get a basic understanding. You don't need to be an expert. I wouldn't even call myself an expert, but I at least made it a priority for me to understand what goes on behind the scenes. Because if you can kind of understand the language, it'll help you like move way faster and it'll help you make better decisions and less kind of like I didn't know that was happening. But you don't know. Like you may get put a contract in front of you and you're like oh this is good, but then like in a year you'll be like wait like you never told me this. You're ripping me off. No, it was actually right here. You just didn't read your contract. It is so important to understand what goes on in the business. It is super, super important. So any young artist, there's some pretty great music business 101 books that are out there that you can just pick up. Read it before you go to bed. Read it a little bit if you're just hanging out. Just get your knowledge around that, and then as soon as you do, you'll be set. You'll feel ready to tackle this.
All right, well there we go, man. I thank you so much for just giving us a little time just to be on the podcast. Obviously, if it's cool with you, we're gonna play a few of your cuts because I want people to
Definitely.
understand what they're listening to because there is genius behind the music itself. I
Thank you.
mean, you are the first. I gotta be honest. I've seen the accolades. I've seen what you've done in such a little bit of time. You're a DJ. You're a producer. You're to some degree artist. You're good at what you do. You're a tinkerer. You're a tastemaker. I think you're one of the few tastemakers I've had on this podcast. I don't even
Thank
think I
you.
had another one. Like I was studying to get ready to, cause I don't. Gotta be honest. I don't know how to talk to a tastemaker. I don't. I really don't. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's something. But at the end of the day, you're a guy that, and one thing I can vibe with, you're very passionate about what you do, and it shows. And you've made people better for it, and you've made the listeners better for it too. Of what you've done, I wish you nothing but the best, much success. Go ahead, all your social media, throw it out there. Any new gigs, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so all my fans, if you're current fans, thank you very much for listening and catching up with me. For new fans who want to know more about me, make sure to check me out on Instagram, Gromo Music, YouTube, Gromo Music, Spotify, Gromo Music, Apple Music. I'm on all of them. It's just Gromo Music, Gromo Music.
And I'll make sure I post that in this in the podcast when it goes up, so people can check you out because this is how people do. This is how the internet works. They've already passed judgment on you before they hit play, so
Yeah.
they're gonna go back and listen, and then they're gonna listen to this. They're like, oh, okay, I get it. So it's one of the things I have learned by doing this. People like to root for people. Like you
Hmm.
can make all the greatest music in the world, but when they hear this or the backstory, then they're like, "Oh well, now I like that guy."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm. This is why I'm here now. So please go ahead, check out Gromo Music, and thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of your day.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate the time.
All right, man. Thank you so much. All
Thanks.
right,
Have a good one.
you too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.